So today we're going to talk about first declension nouns in ancient Greek. But before we talk about the declension itself, let's review the cases. Remember, ancient Greek nouns change ending depending on how they're used in a sentence. So if it's the subject or a noun after the verb to be or any other intransitive verb, we use the nominative case. If we want possession and we translate it of plus the noun, we want the genitive case. The indirect object of a sentence will use the dative. The direct object will use the accusative, and when you're directly addressing someone, you'll use the vocative. And note that in ancient Greek, prepositions will take either the genitive, dative, or accusative, depending on the preposition. So let's look at the first declension masculine. Now the first declension is split up into the masculine and the feminine, so we'll start here with the masculine. Our word here is despotes, despotu, and we go to the genitive to get our stem, drop off the ending, and then we add our whole declension endings. So here's a good spot to pause the video, write down these endings, but note that your article, ha, tu, ta, ton, oi, ton, tois, and tus, in the beginning of all these nouns, will stay the same for all masculine nouns, no matter what declension they are. However, these endings, ace, u, a, ain, will change. So in the nominative we have ha, despotes, tu, despotu, ta, despote, ton, despotain, and then the vocative o, despota, and the plural oi, despotai, ton, despoton, tois, despotais, tus, despotas, and the vocative o, despotai. Now in the first declension there are also alpha stem nouns, like neanias, neaniu, which is young man. And the only difference here is you still go to the genitive to get your stem, and we see that our endings, where we saw an eta before, we now see an alpha. So that's the nominative, the dative, and the accusative singular. Now for ancient Greek, it's most important that we recognize these endings. So remember, the endings look just like the normal first declension masculine, except where you saw an eta before, you now see an alpha. So take a second to write these down as well. Now let's look at a feminine noun, crane, cranes, which is a spring. So the same rules apply. We go to the genitive, drop that ending to get our stem, and here is our declension. So pause here, write these down, but note that our articles, he, tes, te, tain, and so on and so forth, will stay the same for all feminine nouns, whereas our case endings at the end of these nouns themselves will only work for first declension feminine nouns. So we have he, crane, tes, cranes, te, crane, tain, cranane, o, crane, I, crani, ton, cranon, tis, cranice, tas, cranas, o, crani. So as I said, take a moment to write these down and familiarize yourself with them. Now the feminine will have some variations as well. So let's look at first declension feminine long alpha stem nouns. Here, your articles stay the same, and your endings are very similar, except where you saw an eta before, you now see an alpha. Note that there are also feminine short alpha stems, which use a mixture of your normal first declension feminine endings and your first declension feminine long alpha stem endings. Remember, the key here is to be able to recognize it, so if you know both your normal first declension and your long alpha stem endings, you'll be able to tell what they are when you see them in context.